Welcome to the Ideal Investor Show. Join us on the journey to financial success. Let's go. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Ideal Investor Show. I hope you're all doing good and you're excited about getting into the fourth quarter, the last part of the year here pretty soon. And I don't know how you feel about it, but for me, it's a little bit crazy. I can't believe that 2024 is already kind of coming to a close, like the next 3 months. So it's been running really fast, but that seems to be the case lately anyway. I don't know if that's something that has to do with getting older or if it's just something normal or whatever, but I always feel like time is going faster. So in today's episode, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about with the recent reduction in federal rates and a little bit of a decline in mortgage interest rates, we might actually be tempted to start looking where can we find properties that we really like to get into, both either for a living, but more importantly, in our case, for investing. And so normally, if you were to just look at all of the United States, theoretically, you have 50 states to pick from. Now, for most people, it's extremely inconvenient to pick from Hawaii or pick from Alaska because it's just so far away and you can't really easily get there. So that gets it down to 48, or as they call it, the lower 48. And so I saw an analysis recently that looked at what of those remaining 48 states should we stay away from. And then also with a little reason why. And I wanted to give those to you so you don't even have to waste your time looking at those. So the first one is, as you probably expected, California. And the reason not to even bother looking there is, number one, because the prices have gotten really out of hand. Right, the prices for real estate versus what as an investment property, what you can get out of it is thousands of dollars of negative cash flow per month. So I can't see anybody really wanting this. But on top of that, the other reason is that if there were ever something going on, if you were to say, okay, I want to do an appreciation play, I think they're going to increase in value another 10% per year going forward in forever. And I want those 10%. And I don't mind that I have to pay $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a month out of pocket. But let's say those tenants that you got in there cause any kind of trouble. The easiest piece being, they're looking after your property, but they're not paying. Then you have the other additional problem not being having a high price property and having negative cash flow, but it will be really hard to get people out of a property in California just because they're favoring the tenants so much over the owners. So that's one that you want to avoid. The second one might be a little bit surprising, especially if you don't actually plan on looking directly at Chicago, which is part of the state of Illinois, but at Illinois as a state in general. And I can tell you the main reason is not necessarily Chicago and the crime and the stuff you hear in the media. The main reason to potentially stay away from it is because they have the Gretchen Whitmer administration egregiously increased property taxes. So it is very hard to have any kind of positive cash flow. And even if you did in the beginning of having a property, and I have actually two in Illinois, now I can be lucky if I break even, mainly because the property taxes went up so much, way more than you could ever increase rents, right? So that's a problem. Now, if you go to Florida, you would probably say, well, I thought so many people want to move to Florida, and that's true. And I'm actually in the process of getting a property built in Florida. But one of the things when you really want to have a flat, favorability evaluation, you have to keep in mind that it is going to be very hard to get insurance in Florida these days because of all the storms that they keep having. And yes, you can build so that the properties, the houses can actually sustain and withstand the storms. But there's obviously existing older inventory. And when that gets damaged, then all the insurance payers, the policyholders, have to pay for everybody. That's the whole principle, right? So Florida, when you look at it, is getting harder to make positive cash flow. Also a little bit due to the fact that it had such a boom. And like always, everything works in cycles. And after you had a strong boom, during and after the pandemic, there's always kind of like a need for some recovery time again. So that's the other thing I would say. Then we have states like Louisiana and Missouri who have very affordable properties. But the economic strength of those states is so questionable that you will have a hard time finding any kind of reasonable rents. And people are living paycheck to paycheck, which could mean like you get tenants that are doing fine, one of the tenants loses their job in like a family, or a spouse loses their job, and boom, they can't pay anymore, right? So that's why those two are not really very good. Then you look at New Jersey and Texas. They're really very different states, like if you look at it politically. But both of them have very high taxes. Texas mainly because they don't have an income tax, and the state obviously has to finance itself somehow, and that's what they do with property tax. And New Jersey, it's just all the taxes. And in New Jersey, on top of that is also the other rules that they have put in place, similar to California. So getting rid of tenants in New Jersey is also very tricky. New York, by the way, falls into the same category, also similar to California. On the one hand, due to the pricing, right? Like properties in New York, especially in the city area, is very expensive. And then the rules make it almost impossible to make it work if you ever have an issue with a tenant. And then West Virginia is just basically because it's very hard to find good properties in West Virginia in areas because it's so kind of like rural, where you actually have a good tenant pool that can get in. Now, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we had 48. So we're basically down to 39 to pick from. And I think that is still very much plenty to pick from. And we have seen really good deals, especially in Ohio lately, but in other states as well. So it's not that there are no good deals. I just wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of where you might not even want to bother and spend your time if you're actually in the market or coming into the market to look for new properties as investment properties. So I hope that was educational and helpful. And be well and stay safe. And I talk to you tomorrow.